A week prior to our wedding, my ex-boyfriend left me for my closest friend. She wants me back now, but I'm not. Life has a habit of falling apart when you least expect it to. 2 years ago, I would have told you that my life was going well, and that it was exactly in line with the future I had dreamed of since I was in my early 20s. I had a stable job, a close-knit circle of friends, and a woman who I believed would be my wife. Until that terrible day. For years she went by S. I believed she was the final component I needed to finish my puzzle. Together we had planned our lives. As well as 1 week before to the wedding. I was blissfully unaware of my error. A text message was the first thing sent. It's ironic that something so terrible can occur through such a commonplace medium. Just before I went to bed, I received a message on my phone. I recall spending a lot of time looking at the screen. I was wondering why S was texting me when she could have just gone into the other room and expressed her thoughts. For years, we had been in the same room. After all, messaging each other while we were separated wasn't out of the ordinary. She was just down the hall this time, though. I was completely taken aback by the words displayed on the television. I am no longer able to do this. Someone else has captured my heart. I've read it once. On the other hand, believing it to be a horrible joke. This isn't possible. Our wedding isn't even a week away. But the knot in my stomach grew tighter as reality set in, bending into a jagged, pointy object. It was more than just an emotional feeling. It had a visceral quality. I had to sit down before my legs buckled due to a pain that shot through my chest. Despite my desire to yell, scream, and smash my phone against the wall, I refrained from doing any of those actions. Rather, I simply sat there, stunned. Reading the words she had sent so nonchalantly again. As the minutes stretched into hours, I sat on the side of our bed and stared at nothing because my emotions were out of sync with my thoughts. A few harsh words had just been spoken without fanfare, upending my destiny. I didn't know who this other person was. Additionally, I didn't want to know. However, the truth arrived sooner than I anticipated. I learned the following day not from a phone call or another message from S, but rather from my own insight. My best pal was there. Or the man who used to be my closest confidant either. He had frequently stopped by our house to have drinks and talk about life, sports, and the future. I had no suspicions at all. He was courteous all the time. I was respectful of S, and believed he was a person I could completely rely on. How foolish I was. I don't recall much of the days that followed. Aside from the intense sense of betrayal, 2 persons I had fully trusted betrayed me. I had been getting ready to wed my beloved. Only to discover that she had been falling for someone else, someone I had allowed into my house right in front of me. Someone with whom I had shared a chuckle, shared secrets with. Naturally, the wedding was called off. There was no major altercation, no big confrontation between the 3 of us. There was nothing to say, so I didn't even bother to contact S. She could have apologized or offered an explanation, but her actions spoke louder than words. Regarding him, I erased all traces of him from my life and banned his number. The energy required to yell at him was not worth it. After that, S made an effort to get in touch. Wave after wave of increasingly desperate communications arrived. She admitted that she had erred. She apologized. That if I only gave her another chance, we could make things right. However, I was aware. There was no way out of this. I also blocked her. After taking that last step, I made an effort to move on. However, letting go was not as simple as it seemed. The months following the split passed quickly. I felt like a sailor who had been shipwrecked, wandering in the dark, attempting to put the shards of a life that had been destroyed in one night back together. The house seemed too large. Every nook and cranny held memories of us. It was too empty without us. Of a life we were meant to live together. I made an effort to forget those recollections, one by one, eradicating every tangible evidence of her existence. Her toothbrush, books, and clothing were all thrown in the garbage. However, it was more difficult to erase the recollections. They refused to leave my memory, clinging to it like a persistent taint. My work became my haven. I worked more hours than everyone else in the office because I put my all into my work. I was able to avoid thinking about the past and the future that had been taken from me because of it. Naturally, my coworkers noticed, but they didn't ask questions. I believe they recognized my desire for space, or perhaps they were at a loss for words. I was private. Most of the time, socializing seemed useless. Since trust could be broken so simply, what use was it to establish new relationships? That was a lesson I had to learn the hard way. I spent less time out. I stayed away from events where I knew couples would be showing off their joy in front of me. They weren't at blame. I couldn't stand to witness it, though. I felt lonely all the time. However, it was preferable to acting as though I was fine when I wasn't. Slowly, as time usually does, the rawness of the wound started to heal. I began to feel like myself again, piece by piece, even though the scar was still there. Even though I was cautious and wasn't yet ready to trust someone with my heart, I gave myself permission to go out, laugh with friends, and live again. Then I met H 2 years after that fateful text. He was not like S. In the best sense of the word, she was composed, steady, and straightforward. We connected through mutual acquaintances, and even though we didn't click right away, there was something about her that caught my attention. She didn't hold me in suspense about her feelings or play games. After the upheaval of my past, her honesty and kindness were a welcome change. At first, our relationship was informal, but as time went on, I felt the need to spend more time with her. Well, I was careful. H was distinct from S, yet I didn't want to get caught in the same trap. I never felt nervous or unsure around her. She had a soothing effect, a reminder that not all relationships needed to be characterized by heartache and conflict. I became aware that I was falling for her as the months went by. It was something deeper and more lasting than the head-over-heels infatuation I had experienced with S. I felt secure with H. I had the impression that I could finally get over the hurt of my past and start over. We were married a year after we began dating. Unlike what I had planned with S, it wasn't a lavish event. The ceremony was small and personal. Only relatives and close friends. However, its simplicity was ideal. As I stood there with H, I understood that this was the true, steady, and unwavering feeling of love. It wasn't about extravagant displays or intense emotion. It was about constructing a life together, day by day, brick by brick. I felt content. I felt as though I had at last discovered tranquility for the first time in years, just when I believed that my history was behind me. S returned to my life. 2 years had passed since I last heard from her. 2 years of keeping quiet, letting go, and attempting to forget. However, I suddenly got a message one day. I didn't identify the number from which it came, but as soon as I opened it, I recognized the sender. She admitted that she had erred, that she apologized for our previous exchange, and that she desired to converse. She said that she still harbored affections for me, despite the breakdown of her relationship with my old acquaintance. Would it be possible for us to meet? Only to converse. I was angry at first. How could she possibly get in touch with me now? After everything she had done, how dare she try to crawl her way back into my life? I had moved on. With H, I had discovered happiness. I didn't require S's excuses or apologies. The message went unanswered. She had gotten to me, and I didn't want to give her the joy of knowing it. However, as the days passed and the messages continued to arrive, she wrote meandering texts expressing her sorrow for her choice. About how leaving me for someone else was a mistake on her part. She claimed that she had discovered her true love for me too late. I initially made an effort to ignore it. As I had done previously, I blocked her number. However, she managed to get in touch with me via social media, email, and even one visit to my workplace. Since I didn't want to be pulled into the drama again, I turned her away each time, forcefully but without interacting. I owed her nothing at all. Then she arrived at my house one day. It was an afternoon on a Saturday. H had errands to run. And when the doorbell rang, I was by myself at home. I was shocked to see S standing there when I opened the door because I hadn't expected anyone. She appeared as though she had just returned from a protracted trip. Her clothing were wrinkled, her hair was unkempt, and her eyes were filled with desperation. For a minute, I just stood there, frozen. It like a nightmare. I felt as though I had been abruptly thrown back into my chaotic past. However, I was no longer that person. I wasn't the type of man who would be destroyed by S's manipulations. Without hesitation, she began to speak, her words rushing forth. She said that she still loved me, that she missed me, and that leaving me for someone else was a grave mistake. She pleaded with me to give her another chance and think about reconciling. She said we could make things right and start over. However, I was finished. Calmly but firmly, I informed her that I had moved on and that there was nothing more to be done, saying I didn't want to revisit previous wounds and that I was content with H. I warned her to leave and threatened to take legal action if she persisted in harassing me. It wasn't warmly received by her. She broke down in tears and begged me to change my mind. I didn't move, though. I had changed from the person she had abandoned. I had discovered how to safeguard my happiness and myself. She eventually departed, but not before cautioning me that picking H over her was a mistake. I filed a restraining order against S following that incident. I didn't want her to ruin the life that I and H had created. I did not want her to pull me back into the shadows from which I had struggled so hard to break free. H and I both deserved better. Together we had created a life, one that exuded respect and affection. And I refused to let S to destroy that. Things were quiet for a while. S stopped getting in touch with me, and I began to think that she had finally moved on. However, I got a call from the cops one day. For breaking the restraining order, S had been taken into custody. While I was at work, she had returned to my house. A neighbor had spotted her trying to enter and had phoned the cops. It was the last part of a long, agonizing tale. That night I was standing in the living room, surveying the house that H and I had constructed together. I became aware of my progress. I had made it, through the turmoil of my past, grief, and betrayal. More than that, though, I had learnt to cherish the life I had created by safeguarding my happiness. My story no longer included S. She was merely a chapter that I had permanently closed. All that mattered was that I was living my life with H, since I am aware that there are people out there who have experienced something similar. I have shared this story. Deep wounds can result from betrayal. However, you are not defined by it. Rebuilding, moving forward, and safeguarding your own happiness are all within your hands. I've discovered that finding the right person isn't the key to happiness. It's about creating a life with someone who values, respects, and gives you a sense of security. With H, I discovered it, and I wouldn't give that for anything. Be strong if you're facing the ghosts of your past right now. You are worthy of happiness. Furthermore, nobody has the authority to deny you that.